Hello and welcome to Let's Talk Sports by the Lake, Episode 2. I'm Jake Bartko, your host, along with
Julian Howell.
And we'd like to welcome you to our second episode of Let's Talk Sports by the Lake. Today we're going to talk about the NFL Draft that happened on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And we'll talk about a couple of the better drafts by certain teams and some of the not so great drafts by other teams. Julian, you want to start off with your favorite team's draft, the Detroit Lions?
Yes, I was very, very happy with the Lions draft. They drafted 6 players on defense. 6 out of their 9 draft picks were on defense, and I really liked the Jarrad Davis pick. He's a really good linebacker. He can play sideline to sideline, and he's also a very good tackler, and that's really what DeAndre Levy was for the Lions the last few seasons. And they also drafted Jalen, also known as Teez Tabor, in the second round. And I'm just very happy with the NFL draft, with the Lions draft.
I think it was a very good draft by the Lions as well. I think the Jarrad Davis pick surprised a couple people just because Reuben Foster was falling so far. But I think he's a better fit within the organization, doesn't have any of those off-the-field issues. And like you said, you need a linebacker replacement. So I think that's a key pick there at number 21. Teez Tabor, now he's from Florida, is that correct?
He is from Florida. He's a cornerback. He's a really big physical cornerback. He's about 6'1", 210 pounds. And so he's a really physical guy. He's really, really good ball hawk prospect. He can intercept passes and whatnot. And he's just really good. But the really big knock on Teez Tabor is his slow 40 time, because he ran a 4.6 40 time. And usually you want cornerbacks or defensive backs to run in the 4.3s and be really fast. So that's a knock on him, but his 40 time doesn't really matter anymore, because all that matters is how he plays on the field.
I agree.
And I think he could be really helpful to the Lions, because there was a few games at the end of the season where Darius Slay was out of the lineup, and when he's out of the lineup, you need to have depth at the cornerback position and be able to cover some of the NFL's best receivers. And I know in those last few games, they played some really good teams like the Packers, the Cowboys. So I think overall Bob Quinn is just trying to have competition on all positions of the roster. And I think that will feed off on a lot of the players and maybe help them become better, knowing that they earned their starting spots.
That makes sense. Well, I'm glad that you liked your Lions draft this year. Yeah. And as we know, I'm a Cleveland Browns fan. I was very pleased with the Cleveland Browns draft as well. We decided not to take a quarterback with the number 1 overall pick. We chose Myles Garrett out of Texas A&M. He's a defensive end, and I was very pleased to see that when I was watching the draft. Also, we took 2 other first-round picks this year. We traded down from number 12 with the Houston Texans, and we got Julius Peppers, who is a safety hybrid out of the University of Michigan. I know you're a big U of M.
Yeah, Jabril Peppers.
Jabril Peppers, sorry, Jabril Peppers. Jabril Peppers out of U of M. And then we also traded back up into the first round, and we drafted David Njoku, who is the tight end for the Miami Hurricanes.
Yeah. I was really impressed with the Browns draft. I think in the first round they got Myles Garrett, who's a defensive end with a lot of upside, really fast off of that end. We showed some highlights on the first episode. He's just really a guy who I think will help Cleveland out a lot. And Jabril Peppers, he was really versatile for Michigan's defense, playing a linebacker, safety, and he can probably cover some tight ends. And I think that was a problem for the Browns last year, covering tight ends.
Yeah, there was a lot of mismatches that they just didn't have the personnel on the field to make up for that. So hopefully Jabril Peppers will play just like Julius Peppers does and will be a tenacious defender for the Browns defense. I was really happy with the first round picks, and then I was very happy that we didn't reach for a quarterback this year. The Browns have had 20-something quarterbacks in the past 10 years, and I was happy that they didn't reach for a player that they didn't really necessarily need at the first overall pick. But they took DeShone Kizer out of Notre Dame in the second round with the number 52nd pick of the draft. And I think he's a developmental quarterback. I think all of the quarterbacks in this draft class were. So that's why I was happy they didn't reach for one in the first round. And instead, they kind of let the cards, play into their hands, and the dominoes fell right, and DeShone Kizer ended up being the pick at 52. So I know he has a lot of room for growth. He has the physical intangibles. He's 6'4". He's got the arm for the NFL. They just need to groom him a little bit more and get him, the physical side of the game, get a little bit more experience in that regard. So. Overall, I was very pleased with the Browns draft. I give them an A- if I had to give draft grades. But that leads us to the next topic: is a lot of websites and a lot of people on ESPN, Todd McShay, Mel Kiper, they give draft grades immediately following a team's draft. And you and I have discussed this a lot in terms of we don't think that that's necessarily accurate based on the players on a sheet of paper.
Well, I definitely agree with you. I mean, on this show, we're not draft experts. We're not Mel Kiper, Tom McShay, or even Mike Mayock. I mean, you don't really know how, a draft really is until a few years down the road. For example, back in 2000, the Patriots drafted Tom Brady with the 199th pick. I don't know who the 198 players before Tom Brady are, but I know Tom Brady's better than all of them, obviously.
I agree. Tom Brady is one of the greatest of all time. So that just shows you right there that you don't know which players are going to be good based on their name and their college statistics. It's very difficult to give a grade based on those numbers alone. So I guess, grading a draft really comes, within the year or 2 years or 3 years, even beyond the year those players were drafted. So I think that's more of maybe we can grade the 2017 NFL draft later next year in the spring of 2018, and just give after the first year of these players' performance levels, and just kind of see where each team stands then.
Well, yeah, I think it's really interesting because a lot of these draft analysts, categorize some players as can't miss prospects,
right?
Or players who might become bust, and they don't really see a lot of the players who are steals. Like, no one really knew Tom Brady was going to be as great as he is
at 199.
At 199, right? And Tom Brady in particular, he didn't really have a great NFL combine back in 2000, but 5 Super Bowls later,
yeah, here he is now.
Right? So.
Next thing we want to talk about, let's just can you give me your team who you thought had the best draft that isn't the Detroit Lions?
Oh, yeah. Well, I think the Indianapolis Colts did a great job with their NFL draft. They placed an emphasis on defense. They drafted Malik Hooker in the first round, and they drafted Quincy Wilson out of Florida in the second round. And Malik Hooker out of Ohio State is a really good safety prospect. And I saw on a sports publication that they compared him to Earl Thomas.
Wow, that's a great comparison.
That's a great comparison. They're saying he's really rangy like Earl Thomas, so he'll definitely help out the Colts secondary. And Quincy Wilson is a really good corner out of Florida. Played with Tease Tabor in their secondary. So I was really impressed with the Colts.
I think that's you hit on some good points there. I think that's it was necessary for them to do that. Obviously, they have Andrew Luck and a very good offense, but picking up Malik Hooker and Quincy Wilson can definitely help their secondary.
Yeah.
Fun fact: Malik Hooker is actually from Newcastle, Pennsylvania, which is only a few hours south of us here in PA. So. Also played for the Buckeyes, which is one of my favorite college football teams. My favorite team, not the Browns, that had a great draft would be the San Francisco 49ers. As you know, they traded down from the number 2 overall pick to the Chicago Bears, and they received the 3rd pick back from the Bears. They also received a 3rd round and a 4th rounder in 2017.
And a 3rd rounder in next year's draft as well.
Yeah, and they got a 2018 3rd rounder. So they traded back one spot. They took Solomon Thomas, who's a defensive end, at the number 3 pick, who I thought they were going to take with the number 2 pick anyway. So they got Solomon Thomas, 2 3rd rounders and a 4th rounder for that trade. I think that was a great steal by them. Also, they traded back up into the first round at number 31 and took Reuben Foster, linebacker from Alabama.
Oh, yeah.
I think that really solidified a great first round by the San Francisco 49ers. And I think they filled a lot of needs in the draft overall.
Yeah.
I think they obviously got a lot of value out of the players they took and the extra picks they gained. But I would give them a good draft as one of the top teams that had a successful 2017 NFL draft. A team that I thought had a bad draft would be the Chicago Bears. I thought they gave up, they gave up 4 picks to move up one spot.
Oh, yeah.
I think that was it was a big risk. I think they thought Mitchell Trubisky is their guy, and time will tell us if he is or not. But they were willing to give quite a bit of draft capital up to move up that one spot. But they also didn't sign, a cornerback or a wide receiver. Those were 2 big holes on the Chicago Bears team. They didn't address either of those needs in any of the spots in their draft. Of course, they did lose a couple picks, but what about you? What was the team that you thought didn't necessarily have the best draft in your eyes?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I also thought the Giants, their draft wasn't necessarily bad. I just felt like they should have addressed the offensive line earlier because Eric Flowers, their starting left tackle last season, was just really bad. He gave up about 54 quarterback pressures in the last 13 games, and you can't have that on your offensive line.
Wow.
And I thought they would address that earlier. So, I was disappointed in their draft from that standpoint because they drafted the only offensive lineman that they drafted was in the 7th round. So I think they should have addressed it earlier.
Right. I think that was a bigger need for them that they should have addressed, and maybe an earlier round pick.
Yeah.
Not just wait till the 7th round and say, hey, we need an offensive lineman. Let's grab the best player available now.
Okay.
Maybe taking the best lineman back in rounds 2 or 3 would have been more beneficial to them.
Yeah.
That's a great draft recap so far. Time will tell whether these players are going to pan out for the teams that drafted them. Again, we'll give some grades in about a year from now, and we'll see which players really stood out in their rookie campaigns. But I do know that training camp for all of the NFL teams begins in July, so I'm looking forward to a new NFL season and see some of these fresh new faces from the 2017 NFL Draft. And welcome back to Let's Talk Sports by the Lake, Episode 2. I'm here with our special guest for our MLB segment, Brian Pekelnicki. Welcome, Brian.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. We're going to talk a little bit about the MLB season. We didn't touch on it in our first episode, so we're going to talk about some of the teams that are opening the year on a hot streak, some of the players that started off with torrid paces, and then we'll wrap up with some of the highlights of some injuries and some other things of the MLB. First off, let's talk about the teams that are very hot right now. In the National League, we have the Washington Nationals. Their record currently is 17-8. You want to touch on why you think they're having such a great start to the year?
One word, offense. They are just pounding the ball. They've had 4 games this year that have already had 15 runs or more. Wow. It's only April. Last night's game on the 31st of April, they ended up scoring 23 runs. Just phenomenal offensive output. They added Adam Eaton in the offseason. Unfortunately, he's gone down with an injury recently. But between Zimmerman and Harper and Murphy, all of which are are batting over 400, they have offense to go around.
That's a great point. They added a couple players in the offseason. Adam Eaton went down, but it seems like the guys are ready to step it up still and continue the production on offense.
Yeah, with their offense clicking on all cylinders right now, and anytime you run someone out there once every 5th day, and Max Scherzer, who's a potential to throw a no-hitter every game.
Right.
They're doing well right now. It'll just be a matter if they can sustain that momentum throughout the whole year.
I think that's key, especially in the 162 game season. A lot of teams start off hot, fizzle out by the All-Star break, but it really seems like the Nationals have the offensive firepower to really kick it up a notch this year and make it far in the playoffs. Another team we can talk about having a hot start is the New York Yankees in the American League. Right now their record stands at 15-8. What do you think is their success? Obviously they're a very young team.
Right, yeah, we saw some of that last year as they got some call-ups from some of their homegrown talent. Two of them famously hit their first career hits in back-to-back homers, and they were dubbed the names of the baby Bronx Bombers. It's kind of a throwback to that homegrown talent to '96 when they started to really make their run and impact for what appeared to be a decade. A lot of that was homegrown talent. They get a rap for being the Yankees and going out there and not being afraid to open the checkbook, but the trend that I see with that team and the current team they have now are a lot of homegrown talent.
I agree. Aaron Judge has obviously shown his power this year. I think he's off to a great start. I think if he keeps it up, he's going to be a prime candidate for Rookie of the Year.
Yep.
But again, in baseball, it's sustainability. I mean, if you can sustain it for a 162 game season, you're gonna be a good candidate to make the playoffs and have a long run. I agree with what you said about them having homegrown talent. They obviously have the money to kind of supplement that if they need to, pick up a reliever here or there. But yeah, they've really surprised a lot of people at the start of the season. Some of the players who have had a great start, you touched on Ryan Zimmerman. Some of his stats right now, he's batting .420. He already has 11 homers and 29 RBI. I think a lot of people didn't see that coming for Ryan Zimmerman.
Yeah, I mean, he's proven in the past that he can be that type of player. I mean, he's far beyond his skis right now in terms of, he's playing out of this world. But anytime you add Harper when he's clicking well, it's that sustainability within the lineup of who's protecting you, and you can't avoid pitching to one of them because you're going to put one on base for the next. And, the three of them that are really clicking together just is phenomenal right now.
Yeah, I agree. And you've seen Bryce Harper's on base percentage. It's over 500 right now.
Right.
It's that having those three in the lineup, is done wonders for the Nationals this year. Another player on the opposite side of the field there is Dallas Keuchel. He started off 5-0.
Yep.
He was a prime bounce back candidate this year, but nobody foresaw this happening at the beginning of the season. I mean, his ERA is 1.21 right now.
Right, he looks like he's in his Cy Young form again, and maybe last year was the anomaly, and this is the type of player that he is. And that's really what the Astros need. They're a contender this year, and they can definitely win that West and hopefully make an impact deep into the postseason as well. But, when he's pitching well and you can pencil in a W once every fifth day, the way he's been pitching, it's just a huge impact for your club.
I agree. I think he's back to that Cy Young form. His WHIP right now is less than 1. It's at .81. I mean, when you're not giving up hits, you're not giving up walks. I mean, you're going to have success in the major leagues. Some of the teams that are struggling. All right, let's talk about the Kansas City Royals. They are on a 9-game losing streak right now.
And unfortunately for the Royals, we've seen them be very good in the last few years. It really looks like it's the Indians division right now, and I don't know that they have much sustainability in that division, but anytime you're on a 9-game skid and you might not have had the best outlook on the season going into it of what your ceiling was, is definitely going to be a huge setback for you.
I agree. They have an AL worst right now, 6.98 ERA from their staff. You can't win games if you're bringing out the bullpen in the 4th and 5th inning.
And the bullpen was such a key component to their World Series that, once you got to the 7th inning, the 7th, 8th, and 9th, whoever they ran out there, you weren't getting on base, let alone scoring a run. And when you have to tap into that very early, it makes for a long season.
I agree with that. In the National League, the Cincinnati Reds started off hot. They started off with a 7-2 record in their first 9 games. Right now, their current record is 11-13. They've really had a rough slate as of late. Their starters' ERA is 7.51, even worse than the Royals.
I think a lot of that is returning to maybe the expectations of where people thought they would be this year. No one expected to look up and see them leading the Central with clubs like the Cubs in there specifically. The Pirates have obviously had some setbacks this year, and the Cardinals are always well as well. So to see them kind of fall back seems a little bit more appropriate. They're a very young team, so I think the beginning part of the season may have been more of a surprise than where they are now.
Right, I agree with that too. I was watching them at the start of the season, and their offense was just putting up gaudy numbers for the first few games. Clearly, that wasn't sustainable. It was more of a fluke. Some of the players that are trending down right now. Jonathan Lucroy with the Texas Rangers isn't playing every day now. He's given up some starts to a younger catcher who's really on a torrid hitting streak. He only has 6 runs, 1 homer, and 4 RBIs. Now, that's not what we're used to seeing out of Lucroy.
And the ironic part of that, too, is many of you may remember that he was initially going to be traded to the Indians last year, and he had vetoed the trade as his option as a player. And they obviously went on to go to the World Series. And one of the reasons he cited in that was that he wanted to be assured that he would have playing time in Cleveland, which they were not willing to guarantee. And now seems to be running into a little bit of that in Texas.
Yes, that's what it seems like. It doesn't seem like it worked out very well with the option that Mr. Lucroy made.
Right.
The other player we'll talk about is Kevin Gausman. He's a starting pitcher, the ace for the Baltimore Orioles. He currently has a 1-2 record with an ERA of 7.50. His WHIP is at 1.97, and with a starting pitcher, if their WHIP is almost 2, you know you're not having a good start to the season.
People are definitely getting hits on you, and he's really a player that they need to have play well. They've actually done pretty well this year, the Orioles have as a club. They've won a lot of close games, but I mean, you really need him to perform, especially if you want to be competing in October. And at the beginning of the year, seemed like that division could really be wide open. Obviously, the Blue Jays have taken a huge step back this year, who were thought to be a contender in that division. And with him, if he continues to struggle, it may provide a great opportunity for the Yankees to really take hold of that division.
I agree. I think if he continues to struggle, that window of opportunity for the Yankees is wide open. It'll be interesting to see if he can correct some of his issues. They haven't really said that he's injured or anything, so they can't really chalk that up to that. But it'll be interesting to see if he can turn it around. He had a great year last year. We'll see if he can change his ways. The next story we'll talk about is Eric Thames. He's a Milwaukee Brewers slugger. This year he started off with 345 average, 11 homers, 28 runs, and 19 RBI. What do you think about the start of Eric Thames' season this year, Brian?
I think it's a great story for baseball. He spent a lot of time in Korea the last few years playing baseball over there. He cites that the reason why he went over there was really to get a grasp on looking at breaking balls, which he struggled with. Since he's come back, his plate discipline has been phenomenal. And that's really the key to this. A lot of people are going to suggest or speculate that there's something mischievous in the background, a PED use or something like that. But in looking at the numbers and looking how he's corrected and changed his swing, for the time being, I'm not gonna hear any of that. I think he's just doing a great job. 8 of his homers have come against the Reds, which kind of points to the Reds' struggles. Any one time you're hitting that many homers against one team.
Yeah, it's hard to win games when you're getting bombs dropped on you all the time.
Right.
I agree with that. I think that there was some talk last week from the Cubs organization,
right,
where they were dropping some hints here and there that they were wondering where all this power came from,
right,
from Thames. And he obviously spent the last, I think, 2 or 3 years in Korea, had corrected his swing, as you said, but they were dropping some hints about PED use that I think is not warranted, especially at this time.
And he's been tested twice already this year, so until I see a test that says it's not proper, I'm going to go ahead and say that his time over there and his focus was to look at various breaking balls, and his plate discipline has increased dramatically.
Okay, and so the next thing we're going to talk about is Madison Bumgarner. He obviously is a phenomenal pitcher for the San Francisco Giants. He's led them to, I think, 2 or 3 World Series now. He's been phenomenal in the postseason for them, and he actually just is going to be out for the next 2 months due to a horrific dirt bike accident.
Yeah, not the best way to spend your off day, but the one thing that the Giants were quick to point to is that they would not be seeking any of that money back that he would be off for. Obviously, there are some legal ramifications as a professional athlete of making sure to keep your body and things safe, but they were not going to be seeking any of the financial money back for that. But certainly, if it's something he could do again, I'm sure he would not have done that.
Yes, I think he would take it back in a heartbeat. Obviously, when players have an off day, you're crossing your fingers as an organization. They're going to make smart decisions. Unfortunately, in this point, he just had an unfortunate accident. And I think that really is a testament to him as a player and as a person that the Giants aren't looking to take back any of his salary for this year. And I really wish him the best. It was just an unfortunate thing that happened. Like I said, he's going to be out for about 2 months. It looks like he's going to start his rehab sometime early this week. So that's a promising note from Madison Bumgarner. The last topic of today about the Major League Baseball is a lot of people in the offseason, a lot of people still currently are talking about the game being too slow. What do you think about that, Brian?
I can certainly understand that. I think more of the issue is a lack of action and excitement. No one's really going to complain about a game that goes into the 11th inning that's tied 4-4. I mean, we saw some of the best games of recent years in this past postseason, and no one was complaining that the games were long. They had plenty of excitement. I think more of the issue is that the excitement or keeping things fast-paced.
Okay. I think that's a good point. I think people like to say that the games may be going too slow or that they're a little bit too long, but it's really just keeping people's attention, and that excitement factor really plays into that.
Sure.
How do you think we can fix that? How do you think the major leagues are going to take steps to kind of rectify?
One of the issues I think currently is the current instant replay system. I would like to see something that's more immediate. It's a common scene that the camera crews pan to when someone runs through first, and they pan to the coach in the dugout on the phone getting ready to take the call from someone who's reviewing the tape. I'd like to see it be more of an immediate, needs to be done within 2 seconds or you move on. The one that comes to my mind that many local people will remember is Armando Galarraga for the Detroit Tigers, whether you're a Erie Seawolves fan or a fan of the Indian, when he famously did throw a perfect game in 2010, and Jim Joyce had messed up the very last call on the 27th out, and something like that's very cut and dry and can be fixed. I would love to see fixed, but if you're calling to have someone review it in a booth before you're determining whether you want to review it, it might be close enough to just let the call on the field stand.
I agree with that 100%. I think they have the right idea with the process. I think there's a lot of calls like that Galarraga incident that is cut and dry and can be reversed right away. But I don't think the process needs to take 5 minutes at times. I really think that you lose that attention span of the fan right there.
And I'd always hold true to the point that, if you're not able to determine that you would like to challenge it immediately, then it's probably close enough that a call's a call.
Right. Okay, well, that sums it up for this topic of the MLB season. We're just talking about some of the teams that have been off to a hot start, some of the players that have done really well so far, and highlighted some of the top stories of the MLB season so far. Again, we'd like to thank our guest, Brian Peklenke, for joining us on the show. That does it for this episode of Let's Talk Sports by the Lake. Again, I'm Jake Bartko, and you guys have a great day.